So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where China attacks India. Now these two countries are the most populated countries in the world, and they're also super strong militarily. China ranks at around number 2 and India at around number 4. And on top of that, these two countries politically are not very friendly. They have a very long rivalry, and part of that is to do with border disputes both in Kashmir as well as over here in this region. But one thing leads to another and tensions boil over and China declares war on India. If you guys do enjoy today's war scenario video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Make sure to check out our membership program for early access to each and every single one of our videos. Check out the Discord server, link to that in the description. And most importantly, check out the 200,000 subscriber merchandise, link to that in the description as well. But let's go ahead and jump straight into this scenario. So China has officially declared war on India and is sending their military straight in. Now the Himalaya mountains will make it extremely difficult for there to actually be a one-on-one war between these two countries. So China is going to call their ally of Pakistan into the war. We all know that Pakistan and India do not like each other, but we also all know that Pakistan and China are very close allies, specifically in this strategic department. So them joining the war almost instantly makes total sense, but it's also where we're going to see the fighting begin. So logically, Chinese forces would probably already be stationed in Pakistan, ready to go as soon as the war is declared. So we will see Pakistani as well as Chinese forces start to advance straight out from Pakistan's capital area, focusing in on some territorial disputes they have up here in Kashmir. Now, this region is very difficult to navigate, so there wouldn't really be that much military there. More so, we would see the Pakistani and Chinese militaries try to go towards New Delhi, which is the capital city of India. I know that I said that there probably wouldn't be too much fighting between China and India directly, but there would be a little bit over here in this region. It's less rough than some of the other mountainous areas, so if China does want to invade into India, this is the spot to do it. But they'll send a few forces in, and eventually they'll stop as India sends the rest of their military to deal with this. A lot of population up through here, and they want to protect that as much as possible. But the same can be said over here. There's a lot of population, and the closer they get to New Delhi, the more and more people they're invading. So India will finally be able to halt the advance of the red team, and they'll begin to push back in the south, keeping Chinese and Pakistani forces further away from their city. Now, India isn't going to just play defense here, of course. They're going to have the ability to go on offense. They have a ton of population, and thus they can get a ton of manpower to do things like this. Granted, quality of troop may not be as great if you're just, recruiting people off the street, but this is a very large-scale war, so they might just have to do that. Nonetheless, though, they will target this area in the south of Pakistan, and their main goal is to reach over to the entrance of this river, which is pretty important for the rest of Pakistan up here. If they're able to cut off access to that, then that's going to hinder Pakistan a lot, and that's exactly what they do as they cut over and take the entrance of the river. Now, along with that, they also take one major city of Pakistan, forcing them to have to rely on China a lot more than they already are. Okay, so far, the fighting has been pretty regional. You have one spot over here in the far east of India, you have one up here near Kashmir, and then you have one front down here in the south of Pakistan. Other than that, there's no large conventional front line, and these countries are mainly prioritizing strategic targets, like for the red team, India's capital, and for India, the southern river of Pakistan. But at this point, though, this war would have detrimental effects to the rest of the world. China is the #1 exporter in the world, and India is getting up there in terms of economic output to the rest of the world. So every other country will have their eyes on this conflict. They want to monitor it, and they want to make sure that their favorable side is winning. Now, for most countries, that's probably going to be China, since once again, they are the #1 exporter in the world and very viable for just trade in general. But also, you have to remember that there's some ideological things at play here, like the Western countries are going to support India, even though China is a bigger trade partner, because China is a communist country and they're on bad terms, whereas the West is on pretty good terms with India. Some countries like Russia are going to be pretty split. They have very good economic relations with both China and India. Strategically, they also have good relations with both of these countries, but politically, they're a little bit more friendly with India, I want to say. They're not going to be joining this war, though, because once again, these are two of their allies fighting. They don't want to get involved in between that, which means that any other country that gets involved is probably going to be a Western country or a regional ally of China. Now, there is a specific alliance in real life that is aimed at deterring China, and it's known as the Quad, which includes India, Australia, Japan, and the United States. Now, I'm pretty sure this is just a strategical alliance. This isn't an actual formidable military alliance that is an attack one, attack all. So China invading India wouldn't necessarily activate it, but even so, these countries are going to come to the aid of India in this war. So the United States, Japan, and Australia all declare war on China in the name of the defense of India, and things are going to escalate greatly from here. Because after the United States and Japan gets involved, Taiwan officially enters the war. Now, I don't know if this would actually intentionally they would join, or if it would be more so if they get drawn in automatically, because remember, China claims Taiwan, but Taiwan doesn't claim China, and their right to exist is up in the air. So this could very well just be a matter of automatically joining. But with the US now in the war, India is going to get a ton of help. The Americans will start to send troops over into India, and the Australians will as well. But also, they're going to be focused on protecting Japan and also protecting Taiwan, who is a very formidable military power. However, in the face of the entire Chinese military, they will not be able to hold off for a very long time. Eventually, they'll lose both their capital city and the major city in the south, and they will capitulate over to China. Now, that wouldn't necessarily be the end of fighting in Taiwan, because I have a feeling that the Taiwanese would not want to be a part of China and thus would commit to guerrilla warfare, but I can't really depict that here, so just big pink Taiwan. Anyway, back over on this front line over here, China and Pakistan will go ahead and speed up their invasion of India because they know that there are additional troops coming from overseas, and they don't really like their chances of fighting the US, India, and Australia all together at once. So Pakistan and China will quickly approach the capital city of India. The alarms are going off in New Delhi because, hey, you know, invasion forces are a couple miles away from our city. And on top of that, the Chinese are now also helping out in the other regions of Kashmir. They are sending in a lot of their troops, and then eventually the entire region will come under red team control. Now, the one area that India is not suffering right now is over here in the south of Pakistan, as they're going to be able to take yet another major city away from the Pakistani defenders. And they will also cross the border in other areas, now heading north towards Islamabad. They're going to utilize this river here. They're going to capture all of the land that is east of it, and they'll use it as a natural boundary between them and invading Pakistani forces. Additionally, India will carry out a large-scale counteroffensive in the south of the red team's occupation zone, pushing them a little bit further away from their capital city, but also entering into this area of Pakistan right here and meeting up with their invading forces. So now you can see how one solidified front line has emerged in India. Back over here in this region, China is still doing damage to India. Their invasion has picked up once more, and they are starting to reach towards the border of both Bhutan and Bangladesh. This area right here will just kind of capitulate by default. I don't think there's a whole ton of people there, but correct me if I'm wrong. And China will begin to advance the corridor between this part of India and the main part of India. It has just occurred to me that I actually don't know the name of this, so sorry for not knowing. I feel like I should know that, but I don't. So let me know in the comments down below, what is the name of this region of India? You know, the whole separated area. Anyway, American, Australian, and even in some cases, Japanese forces will arrive in India to start to help out their ally. And this is going to be a big turning point for the blue team, who is now going to use their new manpower and even technology and equipment to push back the red team's armies away from India's capital city. And they'll start a campaign to liberate this major city up here from red team forces. They feel like if they do so, they'll have a better chance of pushing up north towards Islamabad. So the blue team sets out a pretty rigorous invasion plan. First of all, their main priority is to recapture this major city up here away from red team forces. From there, they'll send their military in to Pakistan and focus on capturing these two major cities here. So that includes getting rid of the forces here and invading all of this land. For phase 3 of their invasion plan, the blue team will look to invade this area of Pakistan, which includes capturing all of this land and cutting off Pakistan from the sea. And after that is accomplished, and only after that is accomplished, will the blue team try to focus on capturing Islamabad. They will then focus on retaking all of the Kashmir region, and finally, they will focus on taking over the rest of Pakistan. That is phase 6 of their invasion plan. So, okay, real quick, if you would like to see me draw out invasion plans more often in these scenario videos, let me know in the comments below. I've never done something like this before, but I think it could be pretty beneficial for the video, so yeah, just let me know in the comments. Anyway though, the blue team will now activate phase 1 of their invasion plan, the recapturing of this major city here. Sources tell me that this city is called Amritsar. Now, those sources could be fraudulent, and I might have pronounced that wrong. I wasn't given a pronunciation guide, so sorry, but the blue team will be successful in recapturing this major city, so phase 1 of their plan is a success. But one thing we haven't really factored in so far is what the red team is doing. And right now, China is focused on taking out this entire province of India, meeting the border of Bangladesh and cutting off this part of India from the rest of it, which will automatically capitulate it. And from here, Chinese forces will begin to move further in, now reaching the corridor, but being cut off from entering into the rest of India. So they have captured a lot of populated areas now, but if India really doesn't want to lose much more, they're going to have to hold this front line as is. They cannot allow for China to get further into their country, which means they're probably going to direct some of their allies to send troops over to this front line, holding back China. Other than that, the red team is making some slight gains off the border of China, so even though the Himalayan mountains are here, we do have some occupying forces getting past and also invading in. Now, I say getting past as if like they could walk through the mountains. That's definitely not happening. So more likely than not, troops are being airdropped in, and then the equipment is being airdropped in. I don't know how like logical that is, so Just roll with it, okay? Anyway, the blue team will now activate phase 2 of their plan, which is to capture both of these Pakistani major cities. So they will do a very good job in pushing back the occupying forces, but when it comes time to actually invade, it goes not so well. Now up here in this major city, there is absolutely no movement beyond the border because Pakistani and Chinese forces have absolutely stacked this area. So they would bolster most of their forces in the south heading towards this major city here. Multan is in their crosshairs, however, the red team is now going to carry out a counteroffensive, one that is even going to put a temporary halt to the blue team's advance. So first of all, Pakistani and Chinese forces will retake this major city in the very southernmost areas of Pakistan, and from there they'll push the Indian forces all the way back from this riverbank, making the river the official front line of this war. But Pakistan will cross it and start to enter into this area of their country. They retake this major city here, which is a huge win for them, and what they also do is retake control of the entrance of the river. So this is very important for Pakistan, and doing so allows for their entire military to push back in the south. So Pakistan is focusing on liberating the southernmost areas, where the blue team is more focused on the central areas. Now, speaking of this, the blue team is going to send forces out and capture this crosshair section right here, where like the river forks into 3 other rivers. And then from there, I don't really know what's happening. But doing this is basically going to cut off northern Pakistan from like this area. So while southern Pakistan might be doing better now, the north is still cut off. And arguably the north is more important because the capital is here. But either way, Pakistan loses, and eventually blue team forces are on the outskirts of this city. And very soon, we see them capture Multan. From there, they'll start to send forces towards the other major city, and despite some incredible defensive efforts, they will be able to take this one as well. So phase 2 of the blue team's plan to push back Pakistan and China has been successful. However, there was a little bit of a loss in the south here, meaning that their plan is going to alter, and they will now focus on recapturing this key area here. So they want to take this, and then they will continue on with the rest of their plan. So a solid defensive front will be set up here, and the red team will be repelled, while blue team forces enter straight back into this area, almost immediately recapturing this major city here after Chinese forces relocated elsewhere. That left only the local Pakistani military, and that was not enough to hold back the might of the blue team. So just like that, the impressive regain that Pakistan just had in the south is immediately gone. And with that, the blue team actually doesn't stop advancing. They continue to advance through this area until eventually they meet over to the border of Afghanistan, officially cutting Pakistan into 2 large pieces, the government in the north and the estranged in the south. The blue team, however, will not focus on invading into this area because really there's not much happening here. Their main focus now is Islamabad. Now, with that being said, over here Chinese forces are crossing through the corridor and are now setting up an offensive front using the river that runs through this area. This is something that India and the rest of their allies did not want to happen, but it has just happened, meaning they're going to have to focus on keeping China from advancing any further. Luckily, the river does help them out a ton. But now back over here, the main invading forces will start to push back the Chinese a little bit. They want to alleviate some of the stress that is found in New Delhi because, you know, they're not super close, but they're also not super far at all. So they'll push back the Chinese here, but they'll also start to push back the entire red team over here. And eventually a new front line emerges that looks like this. Now, though, the blue team has one specific target in sight, and that is, of course, the capital city of Pakistan. So the blue team will begin to bolster their forces in this captured major city, and they will begin to move those forces up north, spearheading straight towards Pakistan's capital. While that's happening down here in the southern area, we also see their main forces advance to the next stage of this river. And this isn't like an official term or anything, I just made it up. But like stage 1 would be this side of the river, stage 2 would be that side of the river, and then stage 3 would be this side of the river, and then like stage 4 is the actual border itself. I don't know why I called it stage, but like if you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. They want to invade it section by section, so they just took this section here. But the actual spearhead itself is still going very well, and they are now just right outside the city of Islamabad. China is not going to like this at all, so they're going to send additional forces over to help push back the blue team. And when they do that, the blue team is just crushed almost instantly. They're pushed all the way back to the other side of this river, so stage 1 of the river. And it's a pretty embarrassing defeat by the blue team, who at this point is losing some ground to some of the Pakistani armies that are stationed over in the very most western parts of the country. So with that in mind, and knowing now that their plan to take Islamabad will not work, the blue team is going to draw up yet another set of plans. These ones are a lot more simple than previous ones. But part one of that plan involves reaching over to the border of Afghanistan and separating this large portion of the country from the rest. In doing so, they separate Pakistan into even more pieces, and thus that kind of makes it hard to govern. It makes it harder to control the military that is there. So that is seen overall beneficial by the blue team. But the next part of this plan is to invade north from there. So they're going to start an all-out invasion from all of these fronts in order to push up to this specific line, which is just outside of both Islamabad and this major city. So that is part two of their plan. And then of course the final stage of their plan is to capture both of these major cities. After that, it's pretty probable that China will leave the war, so victory is in sight. Rejuvenated blue team forces will now exit from this major city over here, and yet another spearhead is presented. This time though, it's aimed towards Afghanistan, and what do you know? They reach the border. So phase one, already a success. Pakistan really didn't do much to stop this or slow it down from happening, which could have been a pretty big mistake. However, now the blue team is going to send some smaller divisions into the central area to beat back any of the local Pakistani military forces. They aren't told to occupy the entirety of the area, they're just told to go in and remove any problems, if you know what I mean. So they do just that, and now the rest of the blue team forces will focus on moving north. Three main army groups will emerge, one that is focused on taking land on this side of the river, one that is focused on taking the land in between, and another that is focused on taking all the land that falls to the south or to the east of this river. So the three army groups will start to move, and they start to move very well. The unified front line is proving to be a lot more effective than just the spearhead that they employed to Islamabad, and Pakistani and Chinese forces are going to be unable to stall the advance of these forces until eventually they meet their target area and they set up a front line just outside of these two major cities. Now at the same time this was happening though, China sent some additional forces into the Kashmir region, and they are now moving down following this river here, but also filling in this area over here. China will attempt to use this area to their advantage to retake this major city here. However, they fail. The blue team holds on to that, and soon their forces are pushed all the way out of this area. So China's invasion of India has technically gone well for them. However, it's going bad for everyone else. Pakistan is barely holding on, and India has lost some pretty important areas such as Kashmir as well as this province over here. But the blue team will now capture this major city, and soon after they capture the entire city of Islamabad, the capital city of Pakistan, leaving them with no remaining major cities, and hence their government will completely capitulate, meaning that all of Pakistan falls over to blue team occupational forces. The blue team will advance a little bit further into northern Pakistan where there are only Chinese forces. However, it's not really seen as a necessity, so they will stop after they get what they want, and now the focus will completely shift to kicking China out of India. So blue team forces will now push back against the red team forces that just had a counteroffensive over in Kashmir. They will also do a really good job of pushing back red team forces that are near the capital city of Pakistan. And after a few more weeks, maybe even months of fighting, the blue team will eventually reach this specific front line. So China has only advanced past this portion, and they only have a little bit over here, which means that their main invading front is actually all the way over here in this part of India now. But as those weeks and months have gone by, we've seen that the blue team has slowly but surely started to push back Chinese forces in this area, now entering in back to this territory. I really just need to learn the name of it. But as time progresses, we see that the blue team gains an overall advantage against the Chinese, and that's due to a lot of reasons, which I'm going to go over very briefly here. But this war is technically a 5v2, so the red team has 2 countries, China and Pakistan, and the blue team has 5 countries, which are the United States, India, Australia, Japan, and Taiwan. Now, in terms of contribution to the war, the only country that really is helping out India a lot is the United States, where Japan and Australia are more playing a supportive role, and Taiwan isn't doing anything because they're occupied. And then for the red team, of course, China is the main feature of that team, and they are the strongest country there, and currently they're the only country there. But Pakistan is a top 12 power in the world. So if you wanted to look at this slightly differently, the US and India versus Pakistan and China, just straight up there, the advantage goes to the blue team, but now you're adding in the support countries, and all of a sudden the blue team is a lot more favored. On top of that, the blue team has way more allies than the red team has, which means that international support, although maybe not like direct support, is going to favor the blue team and thus push them a little bit further. And China knows that, and they know that this war isn't going to pan out in their favor. They've already pretty much been kicked all the way out of India, other than a few strategic areas. Their entire ally of Pakistan is gone at this point, and getting all of that back is very unlikely. So even though that China has a lot of territorial gains and absolutely no territorial losses, they're going to agree to a peace conference held with the other blue team countries in the capital city of South Korea, which is Seoul. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the peace treaty they draw up looks like. And in the Treaty of Seoul, we see that actually not that many land exchanges happen, but the ones that do occur are pretty important. So let's break it down real quick. First of all, over in Pakistan, we have India laying claim to multiple areas. Firstly, starting off though, they will lay claim over to all of the land that is to the east of this river that runs all the way through Pakistan up to near Islamabad. So that is one whole claim they get from the treaty, but on top of that, they will also go ahead and claim the entirety of this province, so that overlaps the river and extends over into this portion of Pakistan. And then up here in the north, you'll see that India has 3 more claims. These are all of India's Kashmir claims. So in the peace treaty, they will officially get control over all of them. That includes the one from Pakistan, but also 2 of them from China. Now, as for what China gets from this, they will still get land, and specifically they'll get land from India. So there's a little bit of like a land exchange here. Now, if you don't know, in real life, Kashmir, first of all, is very disputed. All 3 of these countries have a certain claim over this area. It's just that India thinks that they should have all of it. So they do accomplish that in this peace treaty. But another disputed area is actually right here between China and India. China likes to call this South Tibet. They feel like it should be theirs. India has control over it, but in the peace deal, India gives it up in order to get all of the Kashmir claims. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. And then finally, as you probably have noticed, Taiwan is filled in red, and that's because China will be annexing all of it. Now, I know that it could be considered unrealistic for China to annex all of Taiwan, and that's because the US, India, Japan, and Australia, they all really like Taiwan. They want it to be a thing, very important strategically. So China getting a hold of it would not be good for them. But when the war was happening, China never got invaded. They were only ever doing the invading. So like they kind of deserve to have a little bit more land, and thus they get Taiwan out of this. Blue team isn't too happy about that, but ultimately it comes down to India, who was the main victim, and they're willing to get all of this if it means that they lose this as well as Taiwan. So this is what our map is looking like after all of the claims are updated. India becomes a lot larger and also technically a lot more powerful. They took control over 3 Pakistani major cities, which is going to lead to some internal issues. They might even have 4, I don't know, because the line goes right through this city. We're going to say that this is still a part of Pakistan though. But yeah, they still get these 3 other major cities. We know these 2 countries have issues with each other, so the Pakistanis that are living in these cities probably are not going to be too happy with their new occupiers, but we don't cover that. We only cover the actual overall war. Also notably, China and Pakistan no longer share a border. Not that that's like a super huge deal, but something to note. And that is going to do it for today's scenario. So if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is, as always, greatly appreciated. Let me know if you like these more individual Wednesday scenarios, like, you know, country versus country, as opposed to like entire world conflicts and other kind of, you know, strange scenarios. And to be a little bit more specific about what I mean by country versus country videos, this video was kind of more in-depth, a little bit more analytical compared to other war scenarios that I've done. So if you want to see more videos that are this detailed, let me know in the comments. That's what I mean by these country versus country videos. The older ones that I've done, they're not super detailed, but these ones, they are. So if that's a change that you want to see overall on future country versus country videos, let me know. But yeah, once again, thank you all for watching. Make sure to check out the channel memberships, the Discord server, and the merchandise for 200K. All 3 of those things are linked in the description below. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Andrew Truno, Apex, Dex Lendy, Sue, Shifty Mapping, Beast the Mapper, Omega the YouTuber, Opie the Bopey, Euroball, Wizo, Rad is totally my Terminator, name. See what I do, Pro, I ain't lying, CTG on YT, Garbage Trucks, Green France Mapping, Ball Mapping, Ozgeo, A Norwegian, Augusto, Pablo Sigma Cat, GNR95, Zalance, Lizard and Hammer Toad 45. Once again, thank you guys.